The night was unusually silent in Montecito, a kind of silence that didn't belong there, the kind that presses down on a neighborhood known for its luxury, laughter, and guarded calm. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But that night, the calm was fractured by something strange. Headlights cutting through the darkness, the low hum of diesel engines, and shadows of moving trucks idling outside the gates of the Sussex mansion. Neighbors watched from their driveways, from behind trimmed hedges, and through curtains drawn tight. No one dared to speak, but everyone knew. Something had happened inside those gates. Something big. By dawn, the whispers started spreading. Meghan Markle had left. Not for a film set, not for a charity gala or royal duty. This time it was different. Rumors swirled that she had taken the children, Archie and Lilibet, and vanished into the night after a violent argument with Prince Harry. Some said she drove off herself. Others claimed she was escorted by private security. Either way, the message was the same. Meghan was gone. And no one, not even those closest to them, seemed to know where she went. The world had grown used to drama surrounding the Sussexes. The tell-all interviews, the documentaries, the headlines. But this was something else entirely. A split not between a couple and the crown, but between husband and wife. Between two people who once stood hand in hand against the world, promising unity, freedom, and love against all odds. Now, that picture-perfect image had shattered into silence. Inside sources whispered of chaos leading up to that night. One called it the breaking point. The once inseparable couple had reportedly been living like strangers. Separate rooms, separate schedules, separate ambitions. The Netflix deals had run their course, the media glow dimmed, and the tension between Harry's yearning for home and Meghan's relentless push for reinvention had become unbearable. Every conversation, they said, turned into a confrontation. Every glance, a calculation. The argument that night, though no one outside truly knows its cause, was said to be the culmination of months of resentment. The air in that Montecito mansion, one insider described, had become thick with things left unsaid. Harry accused her of turning every private pain into a public performance. Meghan, in turn, allegedly lashed out that he was too weak to stand by her when it mattered most. Words turned into shouts, shouts into threats, and then silence. The kind that ends a chapter. By the time the first moving truck arrived, the gates were already locked from the inside. Paparazzi who had grown used to the sight of the couple's comings and goings noticed something different. There was no security escort for Harry, no signature black SUV trailing behind Meghan's car. Only a caravan of quiet professionals, moving boxes under the cover of darkness, their expressions tight and unreadable. The story broke before sunrise. Meghan Markle moves out of Montecito mansion after major fight, one headline read. Others followed within minutes. She's gone. The end of the fairy tale. Neighbors speak out. It was everywhere, yet no one could confirm anything. The Sussex PR team remained silent. The official channels offered nothing. Even their closest allies in the entertainment world, those who had once proudly spoken for them, refused to comment. The silence was deafening. For days, Montecito buzzed with speculation. Was this a temporary separation or the beginning of a divorce? Some neighbors claimed they saw Meghan's staff removing personal items, children's belongings, and designer wardrobes. Others said security was instructed not to answer questions, even from local authorities. "We've been told to say nothing," one guard allegedly confided to a journalist. No comment, no questions, nothing. The scene painted itself. The gates that once symbolized privacy now represented something darker. A fortress keeping the truth locked inside. And as moving trucks rolled away, leaving behind only echoes of an argument, the mansion that had been a symbol of their independence now stood cold and empty. But what really drove Meghan to leave? That question hung in the air like smoke. Some claimed the fight had to do with a new project she wanted to launch without Harry's approval. Others suggested it was about money, failed ventures, the fading allure of Hollywood partnerships. A few dared to whisper something more personal, that Meghan had grown tired of Harry's emotional volatility, his guilt over the royal family, his inability to move on from his past. She wanted control. He wanted peace. And neither could give the other what they needed. To understand the gravity of what happened, you have to remember how they started. Two people from different worlds. One a royal soldier shaped by duty and trauma, the other an actress who had clawed her way through rejection and typecasting. Together, they created a story that captured global attention. They stood against centuries of tradition, against press intrusion, against the crown itself. They told the world they would build something new on their own terms, and for a while they did. The Netflix deals, the Spotify podcast, the interviews, they sold the image of freedom. But freedom, it seems, came at a cost neither expected. The relentless exposure that once fueled their fame became the very poison that corroded their bond. Every camera flash reminded Harry of the press that hounded his mother. Every public statement reminded Meghan that no matter how carefully she shaped her image, criticism would follow. Slowly, the partnership that once seemed unstoppable began to fracture under the weight of its own contradictions. Friends of the couple, those who had known them in the early days, reportedly said the tension had been simmering for months. Harry had grown homesick, nostalgic even, talking about England and his family more often than Meghan could tolerate. He missed his brother, his father, the structure of the institution he once despised. Meghan, on the other hand, felt trapped in a cycle of public scrutiny and disappointment, frustrated that her humanitarian and media ventures weren't landing the way she envisioned. One insider put it bluntly, they stopped being a team. They became two people trying to win their own battles under the same roof. That night, according to reports, everything erupted. A phone was thrown. A door slammed. A nanny allegedly took the children to another room as shouting filled the halls. And then silence again. The kind of silence that follows when someone decides they're done fighting. When morning came, Harry was seen alone. He appeared restless, pacing outside the mansion with his phone pressed to his ear. Meanwhile, a private convoy reportedly departed from a side entrance. No cameras, no paparazzi, no farewell. Just the sound of tires rolling over gravel. In the days that followed, the story spiraled. Media outlets worldwide tried to trace Meghan's location. Some claimed she was in Canada. Others said she flew to a private estate near Malibu. A few suggested she'd taken refuge in a friend's home, away from the public eye. But every lead ended in dead ends, silence, and speculation. What made this story so haunting wasn't just the mystery. It was the symbolism. This wasn't just a celebrity breakup. It was the collapse of a myth. The fairy tale that had been marketed as modern love against the monarchy now lay in pieces. And the silence from both sides made it all the more chilling. Because when a public couple like Harry and Meghan goes quiet, it means one thing. Something's coming. Either a statement, an interview, or a revelation big enough to change the narrative. But for now, the only thing certain was that Meghan had left Montecito, and no one knew if she was ever coming back. The neighbors said the house felt different now. The lights stayed off longer. The laughter of the children that once echoed across the yard was gone. The staff moved quietly, mechanically. Reporters who camped outside spoke of an eerie calm. No movement, no visitors, no deliveries. Just stillness. Somewhere, Meghan was out there. Alone, perhaps, or surrounded by her small circle of trusted confidants. Rebuilding her next move. She has always been strategic, always calculating her timing. And this disappearance, some believe, might not be a retreat but a deliberate act of control. Her silence could be louder than any statement. And Harry? He remained at the mansion, reportedly refusing to speak publicly or issue a statement. Insiders say he's torn. Angry, confused, and yet still hoping for reconciliation. Those close to him describe his days as restless. His nights haunted. The world waits. Because if there's one thing history has taught us about the Sussexes, it's that every silence precedes an explosion. And this time, it might be the most devastating one yet. The story of their split is not just about two people. It's about power, image, and the fragility of love under the weight of fame. It's about how far people will go to protect their truth, and what they're willing to lose in the process. Meghan's move out of Montecito marks the start of a new chapter. One written in secrecy, built on speculation, and destined to dominate headlines for weeks to come. But one question still lingers in the minds of everyone watching. If Meghan Markle has truly left Harry behind, is this the end of their story, or just the beginning of something darker? The answer, as the days unfold, might change everything. This concludes the introduction section. Would you like me to continue with the next section titled, The Calm Before the Storm? Inside Montecito Life? It's easy to imagine Montecito as paradise. Sunlight spilling across palm-lined streets, luxury cars humming past, the ocean breeze rolling softly over million-dollar gardens. But inside that paradise, within those high gates and manicured hedges, reality was more complicated. Behind the glossy surface of the Sussex mansion, something was changing. The tension had been building long before anyone noticed the moving trucks or the unmarked security vans. In the beginning, life in Montecito had seemed like everything Harry and Meghan wanted. After the chaos of royal duties and the relentless press attention, this place offered peace. They had chosen it deliberately, far from London's grey skies and the heavy shadow of the monarchy. Here, they could wake up to birdsong, take walks along the beach, and raise their children in privacy. For a while, that dream felt real. Neighbors recalled seeing the couple during the early months, walking their dogs, pushing a stroller, laughing easily. Meghan often wore wide-brimmed hats and sunglasses, blending in with the other well-to-do residents. Harry, more relaxed than he'd ever been, looked like a man finally learning to breathe. They hosted small gatherings, attended local charity events, and settled into a rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Almost. But ordinary doesn't last long when your names are Harry and Meghan. The tranquility of Montecito couldn't drown out the noise of their past. Even here, thousands of miles from Buckingham Palace, the echoes of royal expectations followed them. Reporters staked out roads leading to their home. Helicopters occasionally hovered overhead. Photographers disguised as tourists wandered near the estate. Every movement was monitored, every rumor magnified. And that, insiders say, was when the cracks began to form. Meghan, who had spent her life curating her image, felt cornered again. The interviews that were meant to clear her name had instead created new controversies. The Netflix series, though successful in viewership, reignited old wounds. Harry's memoir painted vivid pictures of pain and betrayal, but also drew criticism that hurt their standing in Hollywood circles. The couple, once seen as modern rebels carving their own path, were now viewed by some as overexposed and unpredictable. Inside the mansion, sources described the atmosphere as uneasy. Staff came and went. Some were let go quietly, others resigned after short stints. One former employee later told a journalist that the mood in the house shifted from warm and hopeful to guarded and tense. There were days, the source said, when you could feel the coldness between them. They didn't fight in front of us, but they didn't have to. You could see it in their faces. Harry spent more time outdoors, wandering the property or taking long drives along the coast. He had always loved the open air. Perhaps it reminded him of his time in the military, or maybe it was a way to escape the walls that seemed to close in around him. Meghan, meanwhile, immersed herself in work. She held meetings, planned projects, and spoke with brand strategists about reviving her public image. Her new lifestyle brand was rumored to be in development, a move she saw as her comeback moment. But Harry wasn't convinced. Friends say he had grown disillusioned with Hollywood's glitz. The endless networking, the red carpet expectations, the artificial smiles. It all reminded him of the same performance he'd tried to escape from the royal family. He missed authenticity. He missed purpose. And though he loved Meghan deeply, he couldn't help feeling like their life had become another kind of stage play. The more Meghan pushed for visibility, the more Harry withdrew. Conversations that once ended in laughter now ended in silence. Simple questions turned into arguments about priorities, loyalty, and who was sacrificing more. Their home, designed as a sanctuary, became a battlefield of egos and exhaustion. One insider described it as two people living parallel lives under the same roof. Harry would spend hours playing with the children or video calling old friends, while Meghan focused on strategy meetings with her PR team. Their paths rarely crossed naturally anymore. They had to schedule their together time. When they did, the connection felt forced. Neighbors, who initially adored having the Sussexes in their midst, began noticing the shift too. Gone were the cheerful waves, the family walks, the relaxed smiles. Instead, the gates stayed shut. The couple stopped attending local gatherings. Meghan's car was seen leaving early in the mornings, sometimes returning late at night. Harry, on the other hand, appeared alone more often, jogging, shopping, occasionally visiting a nearby cafe where he sat with his hood up and head down. Their Montecito home had every luxury imaginable: gym, spa, library, theater. But no amount of comfort can soften the feeling of emotional distance. What once felt like a dream escape began to resemble a gilded cage. The walls that were meant to protect them from the outside world now held in their unhappiness. In private conversations, friends say Harry struggled with guilt. He wondered if leaving the royal family had been the right decision, especially now that peace seemed farther away than ever. He missed his brother. He missed his father. Despite everything that had happened, part of him still longed for reconciliation. But every time he brought it up, Meghan reportedly dismissed the idea. "You don't go back to a place that broke you," she was rumored to have said. That difference in philosophy created a deep wedge between them. Harry saw healing through reconnection. Meghan saw survival through reinvention. Neither could convince the other. At the same time, financial pressures loomed quietly in the background. The massive deals that had once seemed like a safety net weren't yielding the long-term stability they hoped for. Their Spotify contract had ended abruptly. The Netflix partnership, while still alive, wasn't as lucrative as rumored. Maintaining their lavish lifestyle came with immense costs: staff, security, property upkeep. Meghan's brand projects were meant to offset that, but delays and disagreements kept them in limbo. That combination, emotional strain, creative frustration, and financial tension, turned their peaceful Montecito life into a slow-burning crisis. There were moments, however, when they tried to recapture the magic. Family outings, quiet dinners, moments with the children. But even those, people close to them said, felt staged, as if both were performing happiness for the sake of the cameras or for the children watching. Inside the mansion, staff described how Meghan began taking more control of daily operations. She wanted order, perfection, and privacy. Harry, however, grew restless with constant management. Their personalities clashed. Meghan's precision against Harry's spontaneity. Small disagreements over schedules, public appearances, and interviews turned into drawn-out discussions about who really understood the vision of their new life. When Harry confided in a friend that he sometimes felt like a guest in his own home, the friend reportedly warned him, "You're drifting apart, mate, and you don't even see it." But he did see it. He just didn't know what to do about it. By late summer, the atmosphere in Montecito had grown unbearable. Harry had begun traveling more, quietly attending charity events or visiting old comrades from his military days. Meghan, meanwhile, threw herself into building her public narrative again. She met with stylists, creative directors, and advisors, plotting her next public appearance. Their home life became transactional, short check-ins, quick goodnights, polite smiles for the staff. Even the children, though shielded from most of it, could sense something was wrong. Archie reportedly asked once, "Why does Mommy always leave?" A question that hung heavy in the halls, even when unspoken. Those who knew the couple said Meghan's independence, once one of the traits Harry admired most, now frightened him. She didn't need him to survive in Hollywood. She was strategic, connected, and confident. Harry, for all his fame, was struggling to find purpose beyond being Meghan's husband. By September, rumors were already circulating that they were living separate lives within the same mansion. Meghan had allegedly moved into one of the guest wings. Harry kept mostly to his private quarters and the garden areas. Staff were instructed to manage separate schedules. Meals were rarely shared, and the once bustling household grew quiet. That's when the tension began to feel permanent. Friends who visited described an energy that was hard to explain, a mix of detachment and fragility. It was as if everyone in the house knew something inevitable was coming, but no one dared say it aloud. Then came the argument, the one that would end everything. But before that night erupted, before the trucks appeared, before the silence consumed the estate, there was a final. Meanwhile, the moving trucks were spotted on nearby roads. Neighbors began texting each other, "Something's happening." By afternoon, the story broke online. Reporters swarmed the gates, tabloids ran with headlines, and the world began piecing together its version of events. But inside the house, Harry already knew what the headlines would say. "She's gone. The fairy tale is over. Another royal heartbreak." And yet, what hurt the most wasn't the gossip or the speculation. It was the realization that, for once, the world might actually be right. The fight that changed everything didn't just end a marriage. It ended an illusion. The illusion that love alone could protect them from the weight of expectation, ambition, and the ghosts of the past. That night would haunt both of them for years to come, not because of the words said, but because of the ones left unsaid. By the time the sun rose over Montecito, the garden where they once shared morning tea was empty. The house echoed with a loneliness too heavy to name. And for Harry, that silence was louder than any argument could ever be. The storm had passed, but what it left behind was devastation. And as the world woke up to the headlines, no one yet realized that this was only the beginning. The aftermath, the neighbors, the sightings, the silence, would soon reveal how deep the fracture truly ran. The morning after the fight, Montecito felt different. The neighborhood, usually wrapped in calm sophistication and privacy, carried an undercurrent of unease. People who rarely paid attention to gossip found themselves peering through windows, whispering to each other over hedges, and scrolling their phones for confirmation of what they'd seen, or thought they'd seen. Something had happened at the Sussex mansion, and it wasn't just another tabloid rumor. By 7 a.m., residents of the private lane began noticing movement near the estate's main gate. Large moving trucks, unmarked, matte gray, the kind used by high-end relocation companies, were idling by the curb. Security vans, tinted black, flanked the entrance. One neighbor, an elderly woman who had lived in the area for decades, later said she could tell immediately that this wasn't a typical delivery. There was a tension in the air, she recalled. You could feel it. Everyone was on edge. For years, Montecito's unspoken rule had been clear: privacy above all. But even in a place accustomed to celebrities and their secrets, the sight of heavy vehicles rumbling in and out of the Sussex property at dawn was impossible to ignore. It was like watching a quiet storm, another resident said. No shouting, no noise, just people moving fast, focused, and careful not to draw attention. Within hours, word spread among the small circle of locals who occasionally interacted with the Sussexes. A dog walker noticed unfamiliar security guards posted at the periphery of the estate. A delivery driver claimed he was turned away despite having a confirmed drop-off. Someone else said they saw Meghan's assistant, a woman who had been a familiar face in town, leave the property in tears. No one could say exactly what had happened, but everyone had a theory. Some believed Meghan and Harry were preparing to relocate temporarily, perhaps to another residence in California or even back to the UK. Others whispered that it was permanent. It felt final, one neighbor said. You don't bring in that many trucks for a short trip. Reporters caught wind of the commotion before noon. By the time the sun reached its peak, the quiet road outside the mansion was lined with cars, photographers, and news vans. The contrast was surreal. Paparazzi lenses glinting in the California light, while residents glared from their balconies, protective of their neighborhood's reputation. Montecito wasn't the kind of place that tolerated chaos. But this was different. This was royal chaos. Security, unusually tight even by Montecito standards, formed a perimeter around the Sussex property. The guards, dressed in dark suits, refused to answer questions. They moved deliberately, ensuring that cameras couldn't catch clear images of the activity inside. When one journalist asked if Meghan or Harry was home, a guard replied firmly, "No comment." That phrase would become the day's refrain, repeated by staff, neighbors, and anyone remotely connected to the couple. Inside the estate, the scene was controlled but tense. The moving team, sourced from a company known for handling celebrity relocations, worked quietly. Furniture was wrapped, boxes labeled with codes instead of names, and personal items were handled with the kind of care that suggested significance. There were no outbursts, no visible distress, just precision and silence. From a distance, one could mistake it for a routine operation. But those who'd lived near the Sussexes long enough knew better. Meghan had been meticulous about privacy, rarely allowing such visible disruption. Whatever was happening was serious enough that discretion had given way to necessity. The first rumor to hit social media came from a local cafe employee who served one of the drivers. "They said it's urgent," the post read. "Something about a last-minute move." Meghan's name came up. Within minutes, screenshots spread across platforms. The hashtags #MontecitoMove and #WhereIsMeghan began trending. By late afternoon, national outlets picked up the story. Satellite vans parked down the street, and camera drones buzzed overhead despite warnings from security. The Sussexes' representatives were inundated with requests for comment, but no official statement was released. The silence only fueled speculation. Among neighbors, the debate intensified. Some defended the couple's privacy, insisting the world should leave them alone. Others admitted curiosity had gotten the better of them. "You can't live next door to one of the most famous couples in the world and pretend you're not watching," one man said with a smirk. One woman who often saw Meghan jogging near the beach said she hadn't seen her in over a week. "She used to smile or wave," she recalled. "But lately, she just disappeared. No one's seen her car either." Later, another neighbor claimed to have seen a convoy leaving the estate the previous night. 3 SUVs, 2 security vans, he said. It was around midnight. They left through the side gate, headlights off until they hit the main road. The story grew darker when whispers began that the couple's staff had been instructed to sign new confidentiality agreements. "Tighter than before," said one source familiar with local gossip. "Even the gardeners had to sign something. That's not normal." Paparazzi, desperate for confirmation, began intercepting service workers in town. Drivers, caterers, cleaners, anyone who might have had contact with the Sussex property. Most refused to speak. Those who did offered fragments, hints of chaos. "You didn't hear it from me," one said to a reporter. "But there was shouting last night, and then nothing, just trucks." As evening approached, the estate was quiet again. The vehicles were gone. Only a handful of security guards remained, stationed at the gates. The driveway lights flickered on at dusk, illuminating the empty space where the cars had been. One neighbor walked his dog past the mansion and noticed something unsettling. "Usually, you could see a bit of light from the nursery," he said softly. That night, it was completely dark. Every window. The mansion that had once glowed with the warmth of family life now looked hollow, lifeless. Over the next few days, journalists camped outside, hoping for a glimpse of either Meghan or Harry. They got neither. Instead, they saw cleaning crews come and go, maintenance vans appear briefly, and security rotations double in frequency. Each time someone approached the gate, the response was identical: no comment. It was as if the mansion itself had become a vault, locked tight with secrets no one was willing to expose. Still, Montecito was a small world, and secrets rarely stayed buried for long. Word began spreading that Meghan had moved out days earlier, long before the trucks arrived, and that the visible activity was merely the final stage of her departure. Others said she was spotted in Los Angeles, entering a private residence owned by a close friend. The gossip was relentless. Some accused the tabloids of manufacturing drama. Others swore they had seen proof. There was a different energy around the house, one woman insisted. Harry looked lost. Meghan was gone. You could feel it. Through it all, the silence from both camps continued. No denial, no confirmation, no acknowledgement of the speculation. It was a strategy, controlled quiet, the kind that leaves everyone else to fill in the blanks. And fill them they did. Talk shows debated whether this was the beginning of a separation or just another calculated PR move. Body language experts dissected old photos, searching for signs of emotional distance. Psychologists weighed in on what fame and isolation can do to a marriage. Every detail became evidence. Every silence became an answer. Yet, amid the frenzy, the people who lived closest to the story, the neighbors who'd watched from a distance, said the most telling detail wasn't the trucks, or the guards, or even the absence of Meghan's car. It was the stillness. "There's a certain peace in this neighborhood," one longtime resident said. "But that house, it's quiet in a way that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like something's ended." The next morning, reporters noted that the flagpole near the Sussex driveway stood bare. It had often flown small flags during holidays or events. Now it was empty, as if even the symbols of belonging had been taken down. For days, the scene remained unchanged. No Meghan, no statement, no public sightings. Just an empty mansion surrounded by security guards who said nothing and neighbors who couldn't stop talking. The world had its proof now. Proof that something seismic had happened behind those closed gates. But what they didn't know yet was where Meghan had gone, what she had taken with her, and what Harry was left with inside that echoing home. Those answers would come later. For now, Montecito was holding its breath. And as the sun set again over the California hills, one thing was clear. The silence that began that night wasn't going away anytime soon. For 3 days, no one saw her. Not a single confirmed sighting. No photographs, no public appearances, no official statements. Meghan Markle had vanished. The story dominated headlines across continents. "Where is Meghan?" screamed every major outlet. Social media turned into an open investigation. Armchair detectives tracked flight paths, zoomed in on blurry car photos, and dissected every possible clue. But for all the noise, the truth was buried in silence. The last confirmed activity was her departure from the Montecito mansion under cover of night. The security footage from nearby properties showed a convoy of 3 SUVs leaving the private lane around 12:47 a.m. Each vehicle's plates were registered to shell companies. Standard procedure for celebrity travel, but suspicious in its precision. They turned off their headlights until they reached the main road, then sped toward Highway 101. After that, nothing. No one could agree on where she went. Some reports claimed she headed north, toward a secluded vineyard estate she had visited before with friends. Others suggested she drove straight to Los Angeles, where she might have sought refuge in one of the gated compounds known for housing Hollywood's most private elites. Then came whispers of something more secretive, that she had flown out of the state entirely. A private jet, owned by an entertainment executive, had departed from Santa Barbara Airport early that morning. This manifest listed no public names, but aviation enthusiasts noted that the plane's destination was Vancouver. For those who followed Meghan's story closely, that detail mattered. Vancouver had once been her escape point before, her first home after stepping back from royal life. It was where she had hidden before the world learned that she and Harry were leaving the monarchy. Was it possible she'd returned to the very place where her new life had begun? By the 4th day, even major broadcasters were speculating openly. News anchors traded theories, calling it the most mysterious celebrity disappearance since Diana's Paris retreat in the 1990s. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. History, it seemed, had a way of repeating itself. Meanwhile, back in Montecito, Harry was seen for the first time. He looked disoriented, unshaven, head down, wearing a baseball cap and hoodie. Cameras caught him driving out of the mansion in his Range Rover, trailed by security. He didn't speak to reporters. The tabloids ran the images with captions that said everything without saying a word. Left behind, Harry alone. Where is she? Insiders close to the couple began leaking fragments of the story. One friend of Meghan's told a journalist that she needed space. Another claimed it wasn't about divorce but self-preservation. A third source contradicted both, saying, "It's over. She's gone for good." Each account contradicted the last, yet all of them carried the same undertone. Something irreversible had happened. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team moved like clockwork. Her social media accounts, though inactive, were quietly scrubbed of recent metadata. Emails to her personal representatives went unanswered. The official Sussex Foundation website removed references to ongoing joint projects, leaving only generic mission statements. Those close to the royal family said the palace itself had received no communication from either side. Total blackout, one aide said. It's like they've disappeared into a void. Then, as if to fan the fire, an anonymous tip surfaced on an online forum known for tracking celebrity jets. The post claimed Meghan and the children had been seen boarding a chartered flight bound for a private island retreat. No proof, just a grainy photo of a woman in a wide hat holding a small child's hand. Within hours, the image went viral. But skeptics pointed out that the location didn't match the known airport layout, dismissing it as misinformation. Still, the mystery deepened. Psychologists and relationship experts began offering their takes on talk shows. Some argued that Meghan was reasserting control of her narrative. Others speculated that the move symbolized emotional collapse. When someone as image-conscious as Meghan disappears, one commentator said, "It's never without purpose. Silence is her message." By the end of the week, tabloids from London to Los Angeles were publishing competing exclusives. The British press focused on Harry's despair. "He's begging her to come home," claimed one headline. The American media spun a different story. Meghan chooses peace over drama. In the absence of facts, perception became everything. Meanwhile, people in Montecito noticed subtle changes at the Sussex mansion. The security presence doubled. New faces replaced old staff. Curtains stayed drawn even during the day. One neighbor remarked that the atmosphere around the house felt haunted. "It's not the noise," he said. "It's the quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you uneasy." The few who had once been close to the couple now kept their distance. No one wanted to be the next anonymous source splashed across headlines. Yet privately, they all said the same thing. Meghan's disappearance wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, deliberate, part of a larger plan. But a plan for what? Was it escape, reinvention, or something darker? Insiders hinted at a major personal revelation, a truth Meghan wanted to protect before it became public. There were rumors about financial disputes, projects gone wrong, even disagreements about how to raise their children. One particularly persistent theory claimed Meghan had learned that someone in Harry's circle had leaked private information, leading to a devastating argument that shattered trust completely. Harry, for his part, stayed silent. Those who tried to reach him were met with polite refusals. "He's not speaking to anyone," one old friend told a reporter. "He's not even leaving the property unless he has to." By day 7, the story had transformed from scandal to obsession. Drone footage of Montecito aired on international TV, zooming in on the mansion's stillness. News anchors speculated on whether divorce papers had been filed. Online forums began posting countdowns. Day 7. No Meghan. Every small development, no matter how trivial, was treated as breaking news. Then came the first confirmed detail from someone inside Meghan's team. The spokesperson, speaking under strict anonymity, said, "She and the children are safe. That's all you need to know." It wasn't reassurance, it was a challenge. The phrasing was deliberate. Safe, not home, not together, not fine. Safe implied danger, distance, or at least fear. Whatever she was escaping from, it wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological, maybe even reputational. Her disappearance became symbolic. Commentators drew parallels between her current silence and her past outspokenness. For years, Meghan controlled the narrative, one royal correspondent said. Now she's vanished from it completely. That's not retreat. It's reinvention. Weeks earlier, Meghan had spoken in an interview about redefining peace. Some saw it as foreshadowing. "Peace isn't running away," she'd said at the time. "It's creating a life that doesn't require you to explain yourself anymore." Those words resurfaced everywhere. Was this her peace? A life away from cameras, criticism, and even Harry? In the following days, sightings began pouring in, each more unreliable than the last. One claimed she was seen at a private spa in Ojai. Another said she was spotted in a black SUV near Beverly Hills. Yet none of them provided evidence, and Meghan's inner circle refused to confirm or deny anything. Meanwhile, speculation turned to the children. Where were Archie and Lilibet? If Meghan had taken them, as reports suggested, where were they staying? One source claimed she'd enrolled them in a private tutoring program, off the grid. Another said they were in Canada under the care of trusted family friends. The absence of any public photo or confirmation turned concern into hysteria. Royal watchers began pressing Buckingham Palace for comment, hoping someone inside the institution might break the silence. But the palace refused to acknowledge the situation, dismissing it as a private matter. The phrase only made things worse. By now, the question was no longer just where is Meghan, but what is she hiding? As theories grew wilder, one narrative began to take hold. Meghan wasn't hiding. She was preparing for a statement, a reveal, a calculated move that would flip the story in her favor. Some predicted a documentary. Others suspected legal. The king's first response, according to an insider, was measured but weary. "We must not be drawn into it," he reportedly said. "This is not our doing." He understood the stakes. Any appearance of royal interference would reignite old accusations, that the institution had somehow driven Meghan away again. Still, there was no denying the quiet concern within royal circles. Queen Camilla, known for her pragmatic view of family affairs, was said to have asked bluntly whether Harry had made contact. "Not yet," came the reply. That silence spoke volumes. William's reaction was different. He was furious, not at Meghan, not entirely, but at the circus brewing once again around the family name. "It never ends," he was overheard telling a close confidant. "Every time we try to move forward, it drags us back." For him, this wasn't just about Harry's personal troubles. It was about the monarchy's fragile image, which had been painstakingly rebuilt after years of turbulence. At Kensington Palace, William's team reportedly went into containment mode. Advisors monitored media coverage hour by hour. Their focus wasn't to intervene, but to ensure the crisis didn't splash onto them. "We can't be seen as involved," one aide said, "but we can't look cold either." They prepared talking points in case journalists asked, neutral, rehearsed responses emphasizing compassion without engagement. The Palace Communications Office, located deep within the administrative wing of Buckingham Palace, issued an informal directive. No comment, no speculation, focus on upcoming engagements. The message was clear: distance. Let public curiosity burn itself out while the crown remained steady and untouchable. But not everyone in the family agreed. Princess and, ever the blunt realist, reportedly questioned the decision to remain silent. "Silence didn't help last time," she said during a private discussion. "It looks like indifference." Her words carried weight, especially among the older courtiers who remembered the backlash after Diana's death, when silence had been mistaken for cruelty. But the palace today wasn't the palace of the 1990s. Its handlers had learned to weaponize stillness. The royal household also faced an internal dilemma: whether to offer quiet support to Harry behind the scenes. Some senior staff argued that the family should reach out, not for optics but for stability. "He's still the king's son," one official reminded them. Others pushed back. "He made his choice. We cannot interfere now." The debate reportedly ended with a compromise. An intermediary would attempt discreet contact, not through direct calls, but through mutual acquaintances who could check in without creating headlines. Meanwhile, across London, journalists swarmed the royal correspondence circuit, hoping for scraps of insight. But the palace veterans, those who had covered royal crises for decades, knew the signs. When the gates of Buckingham remain metaphorically closed, it means a strategy is in motion. "They'll watch how this plays out," one correspondent explained on live television. "If public sentiment turns against Meghan, they'll stay quiet. If it turns against Harry, they'll stay quiet. Only when it becomes about the crown itself will they act." And they were right. The Royal Press Office tracked the narrative's evolution carefully. Each morning, they compiled media summaries, assessing tone and reach. In the early days, the coverage leaned toward sympathy for Meghan, the image of a woman fleeing chaos. But as the mystery stretched on and theories grew darker, the tide shifted. Commentators began framing her disappearance as abandonment, leaving Harry and the children's fate uncertain. That pivot was precisely what the palace anticipated. A memo circulated among senior aides at Clarence House and Kensington Palace summed up the mood. Patience is the advantage. By the end of the week, palace silence had begun to pay off. The narrative that once targeted the institution was now focused squarely on the Sussexes themselves, a personal implosion rather than a royal failure. The monarchy, by doing nothing, had managed to appear both dignified and detached. It was an old trick polished to perfection. Still, there were moments of unease. Private courtiers confided that the king felt genuine sadness for Harry, not out of affection but pity. "He's adrift," Charles reportedly told a friend. "He has lost the one thing that anchored him." Yet even in compassion, there was caution. The palace could not afford to be seen as rescuing the prodigal son, while the Queen and William carried the public burden of duty. Then came an unexpected twist. A palace aide, who had previously worked with Meghan during her brief time as a royal, reached out privately to a journalist, not for a quote, but for understanding. "You must realize," the aide said, "the silence isn't cruelty, it's survival. Every word we say becomes a weapon in someone else's story." That sentence captured the essence of the royal strategy. The palace had learned that reacting feeds the fire. Remaining still lets the fire die out. Yet even as official channels maintained calm, there was a growing recognition that this crisis could still explode in unpredictable ways. If Meghan chose to speak, and she eventually would, they knew the palace had to be ready. Contingency plans were quietly updated, potential responses drafted, historical parallels reviewed, and PR allies in key media outlets alerted to prepare balanced coverage should the need arise. Across the ocean, the British tabloids were already framing their own narrative. "Harry's life in ruins," blared one. "Palace concern for grandchildren," read another. Though the palace didn't endorse those stories, neither did they correct them. In royal communications, omission is sometimes louder than denial. Royal watchers noticed subtle signals too. The king postponed a private family dinner scheduled for that weekend. No reason given. William cancelled a public appearance citing personal commitments. Those who tracked such details understood what that meant. The family was regrouping. Inside Buckingham's press office, one advisor reportedly remarked, "We just have to outlast the noise." They were right again. The media storm began to cool after 10 days. The mystery of Meghan's whereabouts shifted from breaking news to background hum. Other scandals, fresher and louder, began to dominate headlines. But within the palace, no one believed it was over. Meghan's silence wasn't an end, it was a prelude. "She's calculating her return," one senior royal source predicted. "When she speaks, it will be on her terms, and it will be global." The monarchy's plan was simple. Stay immovable. Let her reappear. Let her talk. Then respond not with emotion, but with measured authority. For now, though, they waited. The palace lights glowed late into the night as staff drafted internal updates and monitored the world's reaction. The king stayed silent. William stayed silent. The official spokesperson stayed silent. And yet, behind every deliberate pause, there was one unspoken fear. What if this wasn't just another scandal? What if it marked the final fracture between the monarchy and Harry, one too deep to ever repair? That question lingered like a shadow over Buckingham's polished marble halls. And across the ocean, as the palace remained still, Harry's isolation deepened. It was the silence that broke him first. Not the kind of silence that brings calm, but the kind that screams, that hums through the walls of an empty house and fills every room with what used to be. For the first time in years, Prince Harry was completely alone. The mansion that once echoed with children's laughter and Meghan's steady voice now felt like a shell. Every sound, a closing door, a footstep from the staff quarters, the faint rustle of palm trees outside, reminded him that she was gone. For days, Harry barely spoke. Staff members described him as a ghost moving through the house. He'd wake early, before sunrise, and wander the property barefoot, coffee in hand, staring at the garden where he and Meghan used to have breakfast. The same garden where they once planned their future, the interviews, the deals, the new life they were building. Now, those mornings were gone, replaced by an endless loop of replaying what had happened. People close to him say he oscillated between numbness and disbelief. One moment, he would convince himself she'd come back. The next, he'd feel a surge of anger, pacing the living room, muttering under his breath. He wasn't angry at Meghan, not entirely. He was angry at himself, for not seeing it coming, for letting the distance grow, for believing that their love could survive everything thrown at it. Harry had always been the one who wanted peace. Not fame, not attention, just peace. But peace had become impossible. Every news channel, every headline, every image that popped up on his phone was a reminder of the life unraveling in front of him. Where is Meghan? Duchess disappears after explosive row. Harry left alone in Montecito. The stories blurred together, but one detail was constant. He was alone, and the world knew it. Even his closest friends struggled to reach him. One of them, a former army mate, tried calling. No answer. Another texted, "Mate, whatever's happened, don't shut down." Hours later, Harry replied with 2 words, "Too late." The staff did their best to maintain normalcy. Meals were prepared. The children's rooms were kept spotless, as if Meghan and the kids might walk in at any moment. Harry couldn't bring himself to enter them. The sight of Lilibet's toys, Archie's half-finished drawing on the playroom table, it was too much. He'd stand outside the door, staring, then turn away. His team, the small group of advisors who had remained loyal after his royal exit, tried to manage the external pressure. They fielded calls from the media, deflected requests for comment, and pleaded with him to release a statement. But he refused. "Not yet," he said. "If I speak now, it'll sound like blame. I can't do that to her." Still, that silence came with a cost. The tabloids filled the void with their own interpretations, claims of betrayal, stories of shouting matches, fabricated details about custody and money. Each headline chipped away at him. Every time he turned on the television or opened his phone, he saw speculation about the woman he loved. He'd throw the phone aside, but then pick it up again minutes later, scrolling compulsively, searching for any sign that she was safe. Insiders say Harry barely ate during those first few days. He spent hours sitting outside near the fire pit they'd once gathered around with friends. Sometimes he'd light the fire, let it burn, and just stare into it. The staff would find half-finished cups of tea, plates of untouched food, and open notebooks filled with scribbled thoughts. One page, according to a source, had only 4 words written on it. "What have I done?" Friends in London reached out quietly through intermediaries. One contact from the palace, someone who still cared for him despite everything, reportedly sent a message, "Your father is concerned." Harry didn't respond. He couldn't bear the thought of opening that door again, the royal machinery, the press, the expectations. The very world he had left to protect his family now loomed over him, waiting to judge his failure. And yet, in his isolation, something unexpected began to shift. Away from the cameras, away from Meghan's control over the narrative, Harry was forced to confront the truth of who he was without her. For years, she had been his anchor, his guide through the storm. Now, without her, he was adrift, but also, for the first time, unfiltered. The quiet forced him to face memories he'd buried. The night his mother died, the day he walked behind her coffin, the years of anger he'd turned into rebellion. Meghan's departure ripped open old wounds he thought had healed. It wasn't just about losing her. It was about losing the person he believed he'd become with her. During those long days, he began revisiting the letters and notes he'd written in the early days of their relationship. He found one in a drawer, a handwritten note Meghan had left him years ago during their first months in California. It read, "Whatever happens, remember we chose each other." He stared at those words for a long time, his hands trembling. Then he folded the paper carefully and put it back. Every night, he'd check his phone before bed, half expecting a message from her. Nothing. No calls, no texts, no updates from her team. The silence wasn't accidental. It was absolute. On the fifth night, Harry reportedly broke down. A close friend, who later recounted the moment anonymously, said Harry called him in tears. "She's really gone," he said. "I can feel it." There was nothing his friend could say. What could anyone say to a man who'd lost everything? His family, his country, and now, the only person who made it all feel worth it. In the following days, his isolation deepened. He avoided public appearances, canceled planned charity calls, and refused interviews. He didn't even step outside the property gates. Security kept journalists at bay, but drones still buzzed overhead, trying to capture a glimpse of him through the garden. When one photo surfaced, Harry walking alone near the edge of the property, hands in pockets, head down. It broke hearts around the world. The caption read, "Prince without a kingdom, but isolation can be deceptive." To the outside world, Harry looked like a man unraveling. Inside, something else was beginning to take root. A kind of grim clarity. For the first time, he saw how fragile everything had been. The fame, the freedom, the love story. Every decision he'd made since leaving the royal family had been driven by emotion, by the desperate need to protect what he thought he had. Now, stripped of it all, he began to see how easily love could become performance, and performance could become a cage. There were moments when he thought about calling Meghan. Moments when he even picked up the phone, her number still saved under M. But he never pressed call. Pride, pain, fear. Maybe all three. Kept his thumb hovering just above the screen before he'd put the phone down again. The staff, loyal but helpless, maintained their duties in silence. They'd hear the piano playing sometimes late at night. Harry wasn't known for it, but on those lonely evenings, he'd sit at the keys, pressing random chords, the sound echoing through the empty halls. One housekeeper said, "It wasn't music, it was grief." Meanwhile, the outside world was losing patience. Public fascination turned to pity, pity to mockery. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about Montecito's ghost prince. Tabloids ran countdowns to Meghan's inevitable comeback. Yet Harry remained invisible, no statements, no appearances, no denial. It was as if he had retreated not just from the world, but from himself. And then, as if to twist the knife, rumors began surfacing that Meghan had been in touch with select media outlets. No interviews yet, but private conversations, subtle positioning, careful planning. Harry heard about it from a friend and reportedly said only one sentence. "She's already rewriting it." That realization broke something in him, not because of betrayal, but because he knew she would do it better than he ever could. Meghan had always been the storyteller, the strategist. He was just the soldier, the heart on his sleeve. In his isolation, he began to understand how two people who had once shared everything could end up on opposite sides of silence. Meghan had left to reclaim her narrative. Harry stayed to hold on to what was left of theirs. And as the world waited for Meghan's reappearance, Harry's world shrank to the walls of that mansion. The house that had witnessed their laughter, their arguments, and now, his loneliness. He didn't know it yet, but this solitude was only the beginning. Because soon, the story would no longer be about her disappearance. It would be about what her leaving revealed about him. And when that story reached the palace, the press, and the public, Harry would no longer be seen as the victim of his choices, but as the man who couldn't escape them. For Meghan, disappearing was never about running away, it was about control. From the very beginning of her life in the spotlight, she had learned one brutal truth. The person who controls the narrative controls the power. And when she left Montecito in the dead of night, it wasn't an act of surrender. It was a statement. Those who know her best have always said Meghan doesn't make impulsive decisions. Every move is calculated, deliberate, layered with meaning. The sudden exit that stunned the world wasn't born out of chaos, but of planning, quiet, methodical, and precise. For weeks, she'd been preparing. Meetings in Los Angeles, calls under the guise of brand discussions, documents reviewed behind closed doors. Each piece of the puzzle had been arranged with care. To understand her motive, one has to look beyond the headlines, past the fight, the heartbreak, and the drama, to the pattern that defined Meghan's entire journey. Control the story before it controls you. Inside sources later revealed that Meghan had been growing increasingly restless. The narrative that once painted her as the independent heroine, the woman who broke from the monarchy, stood up to tradition, and built a new life, had started to crumble. Public perception was shifting. The Netflix projects had lost momentum. The Spotify fallout had left her credibility bruised. The public that once admired her strength now questioned her sincerity. She felt cornered again, misunderstood, misrepresented, and trapped inside a version of herself she no longer recognized. This wasn't new to her. Every stage of her life had been marked by reinvention. From Hollywood actress to duchess, from royal exile to global advocate, she had always rewritten her role when the old one stopped serving her. But this time, the reinvention had to be total. Quiet wasn't failure. It was the reset. Those close to her say she began speaking frequently about the power of silence. She'd read essays about reputation management, studied public figures who disappeared at their lowest and returned stronger than before. Silence is disarming, she told one friend during a dinner weeks before her move. When they can't read you, they fear you. The decision to leave Montecito wasn't just emotional, it was symbolic. That house, once her fortress, had become a cage. Every wall echoed with expectations. Harry's grief, the scrutiny, the ghosts of royal rejection. It was all there. "I can't heal where the noise lives," she reportedly told a confidant. And so, she planned her escape, not from Harry but from the noise. Her relationship with Harry had always been built on passion and purpose, but in recent months, it had turned into friction and fatigue. They were no longer fighting for each other. They were fighting each other. Meghan wanted progress, projects, visibility. Harry wanted peace, simplicity, and sometimes solitude. They were moving in opposite directions, said one insider. He wanted less world. She wanted more. So when the argument erupted that night, it didn't create her decision. It confirmed it. The timing, however dramatic, was perfect. By leaving abruptly, she guaranteed the one thing every strategist